Welcome to the AKW podcast, a place where we'll ditch the wellness lies you've been sold and learn what your mom never taught you. If you've ever wondered if the wellness industry is just a billion-dollar scam built on patriarchy and diet culture, it is. Women have been chasing impossible standards for far too long, and I'm here to help you step off the hamster wheel once and for all. No more quick fixes, no more powders or potions or empty promises. Just real talk, real science, real people, and real strategies to help you feel at home in your body and redefine what wellness is on your own terms. Let's get into it. Welcome, everybody, to the AKW podcast. I am so excited about today's podcast guest. Her name is Stephanie Darby, and I have had the honor of getting to know her over the last several months and be exposed to her work. And I am super excited about having her on and talking to her today because I have loved watching what she does for other women, and I just can't wait to dig in. So welcome, Stephanie. Thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, it's fun being here.
So I do want to get into your personal story in a little bit because I think all of us have a story that have led us into the health and wellness space and that have led us into being a service provider. But first, I want to talk a little bit about your background and kind of talk about why I invited you on the podcast in the first place. So you're a registered dietitian, but you have a very unique approach to where you also combined in not only functional nutrition, sports nutrition, but a whole body wellness focus. And I think that is really fascinating. And I think part of why I'm so attracted to what you do. So I know with my clients, what I see is a struggle to get off the focus of the checklist, to get off the focus of health is something that you achieve once and for all. And once you have it, you have it. So talk to me a little bit about the space where you are working and what it is that you are doing with women.
So the intersection of sports nutrition and functional nutrition is kind of a funny place because they're completely opposite styles. But what I see is moms who are pushing, 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 going, diet culture saying we really need to look a certain way and be a certain way. And we're looking at the outward piece of it, and we're not taking into account the inward health and how actual health, wellness, healing, having a body that can do all these things starts on the inside and not on the outside.
Yeah, and weight is the first thing that pops into my mind. Like we think if we get a certain weight, we'll achieve happiness. If we get a certain weight, all our health issues will go away. When we see someone in the gym who is thin, we automatically just assume they're healthy. And I think it starts I don't even want to say that. I don't even think I'm not going to branch into that, but that is the number one example that I think of when I think of like how we are oversimplifying health. Does that kind of resonate with what you see?
Yeah, it's like we expect every woman to eat 1,200 calories and to weigh 120 pounds. And we're not accounting for genetics. We're not accounting for their height. We're not accounting for their fitness goals. We're not accounting for their muscle mass. Like muscle, you can't tell someone's weight by looking at them. Like you might assume, but you really don't know what's going on inside. And we think about just from a pure nutritional perspective, like what our body needs to just lay down and be awake each day is we need a minimum of 100 grams of protein. We need 50 grams of 150 grams of carbohydrates, and we need 60 grams of fat for like hormone health. That alone equals more than 1,200 calories. It's like 1,360 or something like that, just to like bare minimum. And yet we're telling women, oh, we just need to eat less, eat less, eat less. And then we're not accounting for the fact that like that's fueling the opposite of what we want because we're not even giving it that baseline nutrition for our brains to work, for our organ systems to run. And then on top of that, you think, well, we're walking around during our day, we're chasing our kids around, we're doing our work, we're doing all the things on our to-do list, we're doing our homework, we're doing our outside work, homework, we're exercising, all that on top of that. Like there's a reason why we need at least 2,000 calories to fuel our bodies. We're not fueling them well enough. And just from a pure nutrient perspective, the depletion of that is just I'm going off. I'm going off ice.
No, I love it. Go.
But just if you look at the data, like, I know we're going to talk more about like we don't want to focus on the data so much, but like from a data perspective, it's not healthy what we're doing. So
Well, I think it's looking at the data in a different way. Like the way you're looking at the data, this is your baseline. This is what we need. how else are we going to support you to get there? It's not just what you're taking in the body, but it's the mental mindset of being okay with being different than what you thought it might be.
Mhm,
It's rewiring the brain in some way.
mhm.
So tell me a little bit, how did you end up here? Because you're right, it is two different worlds. Like you don't see those two worlds combined together a whole lot. So how did you end up in this like vein of combining the sports nutrition along with the functional nutrition?
I think like a lot of healthcare providers, I turned myself into the person I wish I had when I was struggling with things. And I was the runner and the market. I used to work in marketing. It was like the running around all the time, traveling, running, essentially running myself into the ground, literally. And then I had kids, and then I tried to get back into those fitness pursuits and figure out what my identity was outside of being a mom now. Like, where was my old self? And trying to find that in running. And my body had fallen apart because I had pushed it too far. And I ended up hiring a dietitian who introduced me to functional nutrition testing. And it just opened my mind. And I thought, we all need this because that was the information I needed to fuel my fitness goals. Like our bodies are not going to perform to whatever our fitness goals are. Like I love working with runners, like everyday runners, but also if you've got strength goals or you want to be able to chase after your kids or you want to do Pilates more efficiently or what have you, you need to fuel it well, but we can't do that if our gut is not digesting the food we're eating, if our hormones are all crazy and what we are putting in is not being utilized properly. So we have to look at the functional side of where something is stuck before we can get the nutrition in and then dial in exactly how many carbs, how many protein, how many electrolytes we need to fuel that fitness. The body has to be able to handle it well first, and that's the functional side of things.
So let's just assume we're all going to our PCP. We're doing our annual well checks, right? We're
Mhm.
getting our blood work done. They're asking us those monotonous questions when you get there. How is your stress level? Or how are you sleeping? Do you feel anxious, depressed, or overwhelmed? And we give our answers and they're like, okay, well, reduce your stress. Your blood work looks great. And your BMI is a little high. We all just go by that data because we don't know anything else. We don't know
Mhm.
there's another way.
Mhm.
So explain to us who might not know, because I just learned about this myself several years ago when I, like you, hit rock bottom and my doctors were looking at me and going, you're fine. You're fine. Your blood work's fine. So tell us how this is so different than that. Like, and I don't want to like say that your doctor's not doing it right. They're doing their job
Mhm.
and they're doing their job well, but how is your job different? How is what you're bringing to the table different and necessary?
So doctors are trained in how to cure, especially conventional doctors, trained in how to cure disease. You have a problem, they know how to fix it. You have a broken bone, they can fix it. You have cancer, they know how to fix it. Um, but if you're looking at that gray space between you're not quite sick yet, but you're not well, the blood work can't really see that. It's looking at one point in time. And the way that their doctors are looking at it, the reference ranges that they're using are either too wide or too narrow to really see what's going on in that gray space. And so part of what functional nutrition does is one, I'm looking at your conventional labs with a different set of parameters so that I can kind of see, yeah, this number might be conventionally within range, but it's still not optimal. So there's something going on here that we can play with before it gets to be really high from a conventional standpoint. And you know, doctors have a lot of things that they're really good at doing and what they're looking at, but they only know what they know, and they're only trained in nutrition for like an hour. It's just not, they're just like you're going to go to a physical therapist if you need something with like a joint or a muscle or a physical need. You're not going to go to your PCP for that. You're not going to go to a PCP if you need like mental health therapy, talk therapy, psychotherapy. You're going to go to a nutrition professional for the same reason when you need nutritional therapy, because nutrients run all these systems in the body. And just like a doctor has some basic understanding of how nutrition works with all these processes, I am trained in how like the details of nutrition, but then how they impact all those other systems in the body and can lead to that disease state. And to get to the point of then when we are ready to diagnose or need a prescription for something to help us along the way, we work with that PCP to help get that. It should be a collaborative effort where we're all working together and not going to one person expecting them to do all the things for us, because no one person is trained in all the things, and they shouldn't be. It should be a collaborative approach, and you should have a team of people. And on top of that, not just a PCP and a dietitian, we really should also have some sort of structural person, some sort of physical therapist person, and some sort of mental health professional on our team if we're working at a whole picture, whole person wellness perspective.
So I want to talk about that more in a second, the whole person wellness perspective, but I want to circle back to something you said. The blood work is a snapshot of
Hmm.
what's happening. Expand upon that, because I know I have a lot of people ask me about why I get this blood work done at my doctor. Like, why are you telling me I need? Because I always refer out, right? When somebody's coming to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, you need to go. This is beyond my wheelhouse, but you need to have your minerals looked at, or you need to have your hormones looked at, or whatever. Like, go check this out. And they're like, well, I got my blood work done at my doctor, or they ran my hormone panels. Can we talk about that for a second? Like how it's different, how the tests that you're running are different.
Hmm.
And not that one's good or one's bad, but just they're different. And I think that education is power.
Yeah, and so you can check nutrients in your blood. Sometimes that can be helpful. It's not what a standard blood panel that a doctor is going to run is not necessarily going to include all those, but it'll include some because when they're checking like your kidney function, they're going to check your electrolytes. So you can see some, sodium, potassium, things like that. But you're not going to be able to see a whole mineral panel, a whole vitamin panel, unless you do targeted nutrient testing. And even beyond that, it is a snapshot. You're going to go to the doctor and you're going to get your labs drawn, and whatever is going on in your body on that day at that point of that lab draw is what it's going to show. It's going to show that's what your insulin's looking like that day. That's what your glucose is looking like. That's what your um, cortisol is going to look like, all these things. And what I love about functional testing, especially the mineral testing that I do, is it gives a snapshot of what's going on over a 3 month span. So that, argument you had with your spouse that morning before you got your lab work that's going to spike things may not be indicative of what's going on a regular basis, and it's going to look extra high. We can look and see, is that a one-time thing, or is that like a pattern of your body responding in an impaired way to small little stressors, or you're never coming back down to baseline? So we can look at that by looking at what's in the tissues. So if something's not in your blood, it's probably stuck somewhere else with these nutrients. They're not getting where they need to go. If you're eating them, you're eating all the right things. I get a lot of women say, I'm eating the right thing, I'm exercising the right way, like what's up? Just because you're eating it doesn't mean your body's using it. So we have to look at digestion, we have to look at the whole GI system, but then also too, if that nutrition's getting to your cells, well, one, is it getting to your cells if it's being broken down? And then two, are your cells being able to use it properly? Do they have all of the nutrients they need to work together? And just taking a multivitamin is not the answer there either, because just because
It's still
again, you're
not going to
flooding your
absorb
body
it.
with more nutrients, it doesn't mean your body can use them well and in the right proportions. And we can see that by looking at what's in the tissues and comparing it to that lab work you're getting from your doctor. But just looking at your lab values, one, the doctor is not going to run every blood test that is going to be useful. And two, the way they interpret them is going to be from usually from a conventional standpoint that again is not looking at if that number is optimal or not. And then two, it is a snapshot in time. Some of these other tests we can do give a bigger picture. We can do GI testing and look at what's going on in your gut and your microbiome and how much beneficial bacteria you have to help break down some of these foods and get the short chain fatty acids you need and all the fibers and things like that. We can look at your hormones and see what's going on. We can test your cortisol, which again is like it's a 1 day test. So again, it's giving us a snapshot, but then we can compare that to your minerals that are depleted during stress and that mineral testing, which is why I like doing more than one thing. We get like a whole picture from looking at all this and see, here's what's going on today in these different areas. Here's what's going on over time. And let's look at the whole picture and not just one value from 1 day.
So I love that. Thank you. That was very helpful. And I know just from my personal story, I wish I would have known all that sooner. So I think it's really important that we're talking about all this and people can get to again, education is power.
Mhm.
But a minute ago, you said whole body wellness is crucial, which I 1000% agree with. And you mentioned, it is great to have a team of people that is on your side and working together. And that is one of the things that I know I created back in 2019 when I felt like I wasn't getting any answer I wanted. But I'm not going to lie, it was overwhelming. I was overwhelmed at
Mhm.
where do I start? How do I get started? What do I do? And when I started talking to the dietitian that I was working with, I felt so overwhelmed by all the information that she was giving me. And it wasn't even a lot. Like she was doing a great job, like giving it to me in bite-sized pieces,
Mhm.
but it was so different than what I had always been told about my health. And it was just so much to take in. So if somebody is at this point in their wellness journey right now where they feel overwhelmed, they feel unsupported, what is your best piece of advice for them of how to start this process of building a team and not getting overwhelmed, to start to actually reduce the overwhelm by creating the
Mhm.
team? Like, how do you, mindset wise, and just entering into that, what kind of thoughts do you have for that?
Well, the all like doing it all at once, like we just want to like overhaul of it because we want it to be fixed in 30 days. And so we go all in, and that really is overwhelming. And I have clients that come to me and they're like, okay, I know I can work with you because we'll start really small, but then they're like, but what about this? But what about this? But what about this? But what? I'm like, we're going back. We're going to work on these one or two things. I would say, yes, we want a team. Yes, we want to do all these things, but start with where you're most ready to take action and find that related professional and start there. Yes, in an ideal world, I have an order that I would love for you to go through for it to make the most sense. But if you're not ready to start at that place and you really just want to see some progress over here, start there and find the professional that can help you right there and then continue. Like, I used to see it as a line. It's more of a circle because we're constantly going through this, right? We're constantly having stressors come at us. We're not going to get to the end and have it be perfect and we figured it out and we don't have to do it anymore. Um, but stop before we even find a professional. I guess my very first piece of advice would be to just stop looking for answers outside of yourself and start listening to what your body's asking you for. And
And I
that will help direct where you need to go first. Do you need nutrition first or do you need therapy first? Like most people I work with one-on-one, I try to make sure they're also in some sort of mental health talk therapy, EMDR, IFS, some sort of something based on what they need to help process things because a lot of stuff comes up. There's nutritional deficiencies that are all come back down to some sort of stress component. And to deal with that stress component and that mindset component, we need to have that mental health professional like as part of that team in there. And some people are not ready for that. There's a lot of stigma around that mental health piece. So sometimes they do want to start with nutrition. We look at the gut brain axis and what happens in our bodies, the fuel we give our bodies affects how our brain functions and vice versa. So depending on where we're at, we might need to start with one or the other. And we need to like just pause and think about what's the best place for us to start for ourselves and go there instead of fighting and pushing through something that we're not quite ready for and trying to make it happen and forcing it and adding more stress to our life.
and I think expectation of the process isn't going to be fixed in 30 days. Like it's just not. It didn't take you 30 days to get here, even though you might have not felt the side effects for as long. It's been happening internally for a long time. It's going to take a little bit
Oh
to
yeah,
to
I would
get.
love for people to take at least a year. And when I started building out my programs, and I was like, I would love everyone to go through this and take, a year plus. And I'm like, No one wants that.
Yeah.
And
Well, it
so,
sounds overwhelming when you're starting it. You're like, a year? I want to feel better right now.
but at the same time, if you thought about the work it would take to do it in 30 days, I can do all this and it'll all be fixed in 30 days. Oh, that's awesome. But like then the overwhelming load of it. What if you took that load off and said, what if I gave myself 1 year and committed to doing this slowly and in a way that is not overhauling? Yes, by the end of the year, you're going to look back and realize you overhauled your life. But we're not doing it in a way that's, oh my gosh, I'm going to overhaul my whole life. We're going to implement little changes into your existing routine that are doable, and we're going to implement those until we can do them without a lot of mental effort. Not to say that they're going to become second nature and really easy habits and so we might still have to work at them, but they're habits that we understand the benefit of and we can get up and do every day, and we found a system that works for us. And different seasons mean different shifts in our routines and habits too. The way I operate in my morning routine during the school year, in the summer, are completely different. So there's a constant shifting of how am I going to fit these habits into my day that is sometimes helpful if we know, okay, over the course of the year, I'm going to work on this thing and it's going to look different in each of these seasons throughout that year. And here's a person over here who can help me through that whole process.
Yes, I think it is good to be empowered to knowing what you need and not just following a plan.
Hmm.
So it might take a while to do that. So I did want to
And
highlight
sometimes
that.
you
But
need to start with a plan. Sometimes you just need someone to tell you where to start so that you
oh,
even
for
have the band
sure.
so you even have the bandwidth to be able to process some of that mental stuff, to go back to that gut brain axis piece. You need some certain amount of physical nutrition in your cells for your brain to work properly and vice versa. So sometimes people come to me and say, like, I don't, where the heck do I start? We're going to start with nutrition basics to just make sure that they're eating enough food and their body feels safe enough to do anything else.
For sure. For sure. Yes. Like they need guidance in the first place or they wouldn't be there. So they do need a
Mhm.
plan. But eventually the goal is to get them to where they can just fully function
Yes.
without,
I don't
you
want
know?
someone working with me
Yeah.
forever. Like I love
Yeah.
6 months, a year. But by that year point, you're gonna take what we've been working on and
Yeah.
you're gonna get shoot
Fly,
out of the
fly, little
nest.
baby bird. Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. And you
But
shouldn't be relying on someone long term. You should be able to, at some point, implement those things and start listening to your body and know what it needs and see that progress on your own.
right, right. Or a diet plan long term. Like you should be able to, like you were saying with seasons, and this, infant season is different than teenage season. Summer is different than winter, holiday seasons. Like, but you should be able to take your lifestyle and morph it to fit in the season of your life you're in. And a lot of times with strict diet culture, you can't do that. So even
Well, and even if you're not dieting, the way you eat in your 20s is not the way you should be eating in your 40s. So there's going to naturally be some shifts. And to your point, yeah, if you've been dieting for this long, it, you're going to want to see some changes. You're going to have to be open to something shifting so that you can see the results that you want.
something that you said to me last time that we spoke, you were talking about how what you're doing at 20 is prepping you for 30. What you're doing at 30 is prepping you for 40. And it just keeps going on and on. And I don't think we see that far in advance. Like I don't think most of us are thinking about I'm about to turn 45. I'm going to turn 45 at the end of the month. And I don't think a lot of my peers are looking at what is life going to be like at 55 or 65. I am currently living in a world where I am raising two small children and helping two elderly parents make major life transitions. I'm a true sandwich kid right now, and it
Mhm.
is it is eye-opening for me to watch both realities at the same time and for me to be somewhere in the middle. And I think that has changed my perception drastically. But talk to me a little bit about that. Like how I think you and I were talking about maybe perimenopause and menopause and like how what you're doing in your 20s and 30s is really impacting how you're heading into menopause. And we don't think about those menopause symptoms until we're like miserable. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and we don't want to think about that till we get there. Even if like we're
No,
talking about this now,
never.
like,
And
hey, you
I
need to
am in
think
the
about this
thick
now.
of
It's like,
perimenopause.
but that doesn't affect me today. I got to worry about getting through today. I can't worry about what's happening in 10 years. It's hard for us to think about, but the more you do nutritionally, the more you regulate your hormones, the more natural, healthy periods you have before you get to menopause, the easier that transition is going to be in terms of the severity of your hormones. It's not meant to be this huge life-changing transition where all of a sudden we like cannot function because we've got hot flashes and we can't sleep and everything's dried out and all this stuff. Not saying we're going to eliminate all those if we work on our health beforehand, but we can significantly reduce the impact those symptoms have on our day-to-day lives and how we function because they're not going to be as severe if we look at it now. And some of it, yes, is looking at hormones, looking at nutrition, prioritizing sleep, muscle mass, that whole person perspective. It's going to benefit you in your 20s when you're doing it. It's going to benefit you in your 30s when you're doing it. And yes, it's also going to benefit you when you get there. You're going to be so thankful later, but it's hard to think through, oh, this is going to help my future me because we just want to, there's so much going at us right now, but there are also benefits to those things now. So the biggest one is getting as many normal natural periods as you can. And a normal natural period is not one that's full of PMS and hormonal headaches and acne and cramps and all of that. So
Well, and
PSA,
that's what I
like
was
if I
gonna
can make sure
say.
everyone understands that, that would be huge.
I don't think that most of society does understand that though. And I don't think, again, I don't think they're getting the support from their traditional doctors or OBs to understand that it should not be painful. It should not, because I know from my own personal experience, I have been offered an ablation numerous times. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't want you to scorch the inside of my body. I would like to
Mhm.
keep it, please. Like
Mhm.
and that's part of in 2019 where I was like, no, hard pass. Like I've got to find other answers. There has to be another way. But I think for so many people, they're just like, okay, this is it. This is normal. Painful periods are normal, you know, perimenopause, menopause, it's supposed to all go to hell in a handbasket, and they don't understand that there is another option. So again, it's going back to what you were saying earlier, education and awareness, making those lifestyle changes while you're making the dietetic changes is absolute key. And you've mentioned cortisol a few times now today, and I think
Mhm.
cortisol is really a topic that a lot of people are interested in right now. And another great example of how that one hormone can impact so many things. And we're like, oh, well, I have high cortisol. Okay. And they don't go beyond that. They don't take the steps beyond that to work with somebody to figure out, okay, well, what could we do nutritionally to support you to make sure that we are balancing your hormones? And then what lifestyle things? I love what you said about that brain gut connection and how a lot of times there is some rewiring of thought patterns that need to be addressed that get us to this place. Like we didn't just end up here. And I think it is so interesting, and you might have some input on this, and I'd love to know if you do. I don't know the stat off the top of my head, but women are significantly higher in autoimmune disease than
Mhm.
men.
Yes.
There's
I don't
got
know
to
the
be a
specific
reason
either, but
for
it's
that.
it's high. It's significant.
It's
Yes.
high.
Yes.
And I think that it's all tied back to lifestyle and
Mhm.
stress and
And
why are we.
expectation from
Mhm.
from society and from ourselves of what women are supposed to be doing. So,
Yeah, I think it's fascinating.
mhm.
But you got to find a solution for it, right? So I think what you do and how you have such a unique space of coming at it with science, because the science is key, because we have to, that's how we know it's working and this is what we know your body needs, but also addressing that lifestyle piece. I think that is such a sweet spot to be in, and one of the reasons why, like I said, I've just loved watching your work and getting to know you. So what is a big mistake or common mistake or assumption that you see women making over and over again? And what is like one thing our audience today could like tangible action step that they could put into place? And if you want to use periods and like having pain-free periods, like that could be your thing. Like that could be the one thing. And what could we do to improve that? Or if you want a different topic, whatever.
Yeah. So in
I know it's
preparing
hard to whittle it
I was
down to
prepared
one
ahead of time for
thing.
this question, and I sort of have like you said one. I kind of have two
Great, go for two.
things,
I
and
love it.
so yeah. So it's a kind of a two-part answer that's related. So the biggest thing is that we just feel like we have to do more, and so it's like, well, what do I have to do to this? What do I have to do to solve my cortisol? What do I have to do to fix my period? So going back to what you were saying before, we just think that this is the way things are supposed to be, and they're not. But we're being told, oh, that's normal, whether it's by our doctor or society, or we just assume because our moms dealt with it or whatever, that this is normal in the way it's going to be. But to go back to it, like, why? Why did this happen? Why did you get to a point where you need an ablation? Why did you get to a point where, your cortisol is through the roof? Why did you get to a point where your blood labs are off or you feel off and they're not? And not just accepting, well, oh, that's the way it's going to be. And so we feel like we just have to do more things. We have to take more supplements. We have to take more action. Um, and oftentimes what we need to do is slow down. And usually it comes from restricting less and fueling more. We need to give our bodies more inputs and less outputs. So instead of like constantly doing, striving, going, we need to have more play and nature and nutrition and rest. And rest that's not just sleep. And even when we're sleeping, our sleep is poor. Like I've been studying this myself lately. I wake up and it tells me that I've been stressed all night while I'm sleeping. And like we assume
Why?
if we're
Yeah.
sleeping 7 hours, we're getting enough rest, and it's not because there's other things going on. Your body is not like comatose while you're sleeping. It's doing certain things and still
It's
needs nutrients.
processing.
If
Yeah.
you don't have enough of those nutrients, it can't do those things. If your cortisol's unbalanced, it's gonna wake you up to spike blood sugar to get more glucose so your brain can function. It's all related. So we're doing too many things. And we need to stop chasing the next thing and stop and pause and listen. And at the same time, the things that we're doing, the second piece of this that I see when making a mistake is that they're like, well, I'm doing all the things. So what's next? And it's like, well, how often are you doing those things? How consistently are you doing those things? How frequently? It's not just consistently, there's also a frequency piece of it that, yes, we start with consistency. Can you do this thing more days than you're not doing them? Can you do it once a week? Can you do it once a month? But then also build in the frequency because we have to do things frequently enough to make those changes. We can't just like once a month go take a walk and say that we're good, or lift weights and say we're good, or we can just eat junk food all month long and have one day of eating a green vegetable and we're okay. There's a frequency component to that consistency piece as well. And it's not doing all the things perfectly all the time. It's doing one or two things, really small things consistently over time they make a really big deal. The biggest thing, if someone wants a tangible action step to walk away from this podcast with, is just wake up and eat breakfast. Literally start with just waking
Yes.
up and eating breakfast. I don't even care right now if your breakfast is like balanced or healthy for your blood sugar or whatever. I want you to just start with literally eating food within an hour of waking up because it's like one of the biggest fundamental shifts we can make. And then once we're eating breakfast, then yes, we can work on what on the plate is there to support energy long term during the day. But if we start thinking about, oh, I have to have the perfect breakfast and make sure it's got 30 grams of protein and make sure it has fiber and has a little fat, and I'm eating at the exact right time. A lot of us, if we're dealing with a lot of issues, and you talked about the rise of autoimmune disease in women, a lot of us are on thyroid medications. You can't eat before the 30 to 60-minute mark when you wake up. So it's like, when do I time it just right? And we're over analyzing all these things. So just start with eating something, a snack, like a piece of string cheese, a piece of fruit, like something to get your body going, get your metabolism started in the morning, get that hunger feeling. You probably don't feel hungry in the morning because you probably are not eating breakfast. That's also not a normal thing. That's not an okay thing. We want to be hungry. And just because we don't feel hungry doesn't mean we shouldn't be eating. So a big, real small shift is just get up and eat breakfast at that 30 to 60-minute mark of waking up.
I love that. I love breakfast. It is my favorite, and I am with you. Eat
I still don't
breakfast.
understand when I hear people say, that they haven't eaten, and by the time I'm meeting them, I've already eaten breakfast and lunch. And you see those memes like on the internet, like I've already eaten 3 meals and this person hasn't eaten yet. And it's like, but really, like, like at the point we're recording this, this is usually like I eat breakfast so early. If you eat every 3 to 4 hours during the day
Which is
for
also a
balance
struggle
pleasure,
for
you're going to be
people.
eating
Yeah.
4 times a day. Like this, we're recording this during my lunchtime, and it's not even lunchtime. It's like 10 a.m. here where I am. And we think, well, it's not lunch hour. I shouldn't be eating. But I ate when I woke up at 5:30. So yeah, I should be eating again. And then I'm going to eat a second lunch. My husband likes to joke that I'm a hobbit because I have like, first breakfast, second lunch, and then dinner with my family. And then I'm good then I'm good until breakfast the next day. But we think, oh, we just need 3 meals or we need 2 meals if we're fasting. And it's like, no, most likely need four. Like that afternoon snack should be a meal. That will help hold you over. You won't need the afternoon cravings. You won't need the caffeine. You won't need that sugar fix at 3 o'clock or that nap because you're actually eating enough food. So that's my soapbox.
I love it. But then that plays into the hormone health and the
Yes.
nutrition or the nutrients. And then, it's not just
Yes.
the macros, it's also the micros and all
Yes.
of the things that those nutrients help do within your body.
I know, like we think of like what a meal looks like and how much food we should be eating at a certain meal, and then we're only eating 2 to 3 meals. There's no way we're getting enough nutrition because we also, to get enough nutrition from 2 to 3 meals a day, say just we're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you have to eat a much larger meal than most women think is a normal amount of food, or we're told, oh, you can't eat as much as your spouse, or that guy over there should be like, you're a woman, you shouldn't be eating as much. But if you're training for some sort of fitness goal, working with endurance runners and cyclists and trying to build muscle mass, trying to recover from pregnancy, all these things, we need enough fuel and nutrients from that. We shouldn't be eating like little tiny amounts of food where there's no way to get enough nutrition from that. So the best way I like to support it is, instead of thinking about these 3 large meals to get the nutrients you need, let's have 4 average sized plates of food. You'll get enough nutrition in, and it won't like overwhelm your body at once.
This is kind of off topic. You probably feel the same way about this that I do. I hate the what I eat in a day videos. Like I despise them.
Hmm.
But the other day on my For You page, this guy comes up and he's going through, um, like the one that popped up on my For You page was Jackie Kennedy. He's going through like prominent people in history, what they eat in a day. Now, how he knows this, I don't know. I looked into him a little bit because I was like, what in the hell? Like I was curious, you know. And apparently he does do research and tries to figure out like what were their favorite foods, what did they commonly eat, like what's reported in like White House documentation, whatever, blah blah blah. But I scrolled a few of his what you eat in a day, like Jackie Kennedy's or whatever, and it was bananas. It was actually bananas what some of these people were eating in a day. I don't remember his handle, but anyway, I don't know why I was thinking about that while you were talking. That was the most entertaining what you eat in a day things was watching these people in history. But
Yeah, I mean, it
yeah,
can be helpful to get like ideas.
no, you
At
would
the
not
same
want to get ideas from these people. They are
No, I know, because then you
horrible.
think, oh, this is the amount of food I should be eating. And again, to go back to
Yeah,
what we started this conversation with, we're assuming that we all need to be eating 1,200 calories and weigh 120 pounds. And we're not, the amount of food that we should be eating to maintain whatever our body's needs are is going to be very, very different. That what I eat in a day video for that person might actually be good for them. But we look at that and think, oh, they're eating this much food. That's how much food I should be eating. And then not
right.
listening to our own body's cues. And not to say we should always be listening to our body's cues. A lot of what I tell my endurance athletes is don't listen to your hunger and fullness cues because you're going to undereat because we're not eating enough and our body adapts to that and then we don't feel hunger and fullness. Those hormones, leptin and ghrelin that control hunger and fullness get off because of the activity that we're doing to support that activity load. It's just normal physiology. It's going to happen that way. And so to fuel it properly, we need to eat anyway. And that can be really hard for people. So,
Yeah, like
but
to
yes,
not be scared
one
of food.
person's what they eat in a day is not should not be standardized for everybody. And we do that. Like I don't share those things. Like sometimes I might be like, "Hey, here's a dinner idea. I made this." But I try not to show like my portions, or if I do, I try to show, "Here's how what my kids' plate looks like versus my husband's plate versus my plate." There's different ways of doing this based on what your needs are. But again, I don't like doing it very often because it gets too much, "Oh, I should eat like them," instead of listening to what you should be eating for yourself.
When you were talking about one actionable, tangible action step that we could all do today, you said two things that really like perked my ears up. And one that I really liked was I might have it out of order, but like pause, listen. What was it? Stop, pause, and listen, or something to your body. Like I
Hmm.
know I am guilty of not doing that enough. I get on autopilot and I forget to stop and check in with myself. So that is one tangible action step that I am taking away from this today is to remember to just stop, pause, and listen. Like what internally is my body telling me it needs? I forget to do that. I just get so busy in the hustle that I forget to do that. So I'm going to take that away from today and then do less. That was the other thing that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I know this, but still, the do less is so freaking hard. Do less.
Hmm.
And not worry about all the details, not worry about how is it all. I'm a planner. I want to know what's happening for the next 90 days and how exactly we're going to achieve it. And that's not always realistic. I think a lot of people are like me and we just need to do less and just like you said, eat breakfast.
Hmm.
Make it
Yes,
simple.
it's simple, but it's hard. So.
Yeah. Yes, it is simple, but it's hard. So tell us a little bit about how you work with clients. What if somebody wanted to work with you, where could they find you? What kind of work could they expect to do with you?
Yes, so I do primarily functional testing with clients. If you're going to come to me, we're going to run some sort of functional testing, whether that's one-on-one. You can do testing on your own with a self-study program where you get the test, the protocol, plus all the information that goes along with it. There's videos that walk you through kind of like why I'm suggesting these things to you that you can kind of look at on your own time, resources. I do have recipes and meal ideas. Um, what is reopening in April is my membership. So functional testing gets has gotten more and more expensive as time they increase every test I order was increased by the labs last year. And it can get really cost prohibitive. It's $400 to $500 for some of these individual tests. Plus then I'm going to spend a lot of time analyzing it because I'm not just looking at, oh, this value is high or low, do this. I look at the individual values, but I also look at the big picture of what they all mean together. And if you've got multiple labs, I'm spending a good chunk of time and I have a lot of training in both how to interpret those tests, but then also the intuitive, like integrative side of what that means from a whole person's perspective, taking into account the emotional and mental piece of it as well. And so I put all of that into the data that I give to you, and I try to explain to clients what I'm seeing and why I'm making a recommendation. So you're not just getting a, hey, this is high or low, take this thing. It's like, what does that mean? Like I try to explain that to people really well. And so that takes a lot of time. That ends up costing a lot of money. And so to make it more accessible for women who probably don't have $5,000, to shell out for 6 months of one-on-one coaching with someone, um, is to have it be in this monthly membership model. So you get all the training, all the education, all of the tests, and it's under $200 a month. So that's opening. I only open it a few times a year because I want to try to keep it small and manageable. It's not group coaching. You get one-on-one time with me each month. You get your own personal protocol, all your education and things like that. It is just a much more accessible way of doing it. Which is the best way, honestly, to work with me right now in terms of time, money. It does take a year. If you're willing to commit a year, I do make you say, I'm going to do this for a year because I want you to do those small steps and not be worried about, I'm running out of time. I have to do it right now. You've got the whole year and we're going to go through it. And yes, I like to go through it in an order, like I mentioned before, but you get access to all the pieces of all the steps so you can start wherever you want and jump in wherever works for you. So if that's hormones, cool. Like hormones for me are the last step of the train. But if your periods are really bothering you and you really just want to get your periods under control, we can start there. And then we can back up into how that is impacted by your digestion, by how well you're eating, by how well you're sleeping. We don't have to start at the beginning. So I've got all the information for that you can find. If you want to figure out where to find me, is
Yeah.
at my website, which is stephaniedarbyRD.com, or my Instagram handle, which is also at stephaniedarbyRD. You can find all the information on all those options there.
Wonderful. I love that. And I'm so excited that you're opening that membership back up. I almost forgot to ask you, and I ask everybody this question. How do you define the word wellness or the idea of wellness?
Um, yeah, so a big piece for me, so I talked about um, making sure our bodies feel safe. So supporting body safety is really key for me in terms of we need to, when we're slowing down and listening to our bodies when it actually needs, all those symptoms are it trying to tell us that it doesn't feel safe and it doesn't have enough resources in some way. So by working on making sure that we have that safety that we need to have all those resources is a way that we're going to help fuel the whole system, our whole body. That includes tuning out the noise from diet culture, from other people. We jump from expert to expert to try to get, look, what's the next biggest way. We're following all sorts of people. They're telling us all sorts of different things. Tuning all that out and just forging our own path that we know is going to work for us. And then setting and maintaining boundaries is a huge component of wellness to me, of helping you stick to being able to listen to your body, tuning out that noise, and giving your body what it needs to feel safe.
I love that answer. Safety is a big one. And that was another component that took me a while to learn, but I love that.
Mhm.
That was a great answer. Well, Stephanie, I am so happy to have you on the podcast today. I'm sure everybody learned a lot, and thanks for your time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.